Hello everybody, my name is Avery Dixon. You probably recognize me from season 17 of America's Got Talent and America's Got Talent All-Stars. Today I'll be getting into my musical journey and what brought me into playing the saxophone and how I got into playing the Jody Jazz Golden DV mouthpiece. The Yamaha was my first instrument. I started playing on a Yamaha student model Advantage horn, and then after I was about from 9 all the way up until about 16 or 17, that's when I decided to upgrade to a Yamaha 62 Series 3 horn. It was my first professional horn purchase. I had put enough miles into my first horn to where it couldn't withstand the amount of playing I was doing anymore, so I had to get something a little bit more durable, a little bit more responsive, and something where it was a lot less likely to actually give out when I'm pushing at like all types of times of night, morning, afternoon. And it was just like the Yamaha 62 really just became everything I needed in a horn. But also at the time I was playing a Van Doren AL4 all the way up until the year about 2021. I knew I needed to kind of level up my playing style a little bit. So on the show, you'll see that I switched from a hard rubber mouthpiece to a gold Jody Jazz DV. And that wasn't by chance. After the first episode, Jody Jazz reached out to me. And at first it was Jody Espina, and it was Daniel. And they told me that they had been watching the episodes down in Savannah, where their headquarters is. And Jody was watching the first audition episode, and he was like, we gotta get this guy a Jody Jazz mouthpiece. Now, backstory on that is I had played a Jody Jazz mouthpiece on my student horn many years ago. It just seemed like a dream that was out of reach at the time because I wasn't gigging professionally. I was just in the school band, doing my classical recitals and taking my lessons at the time. I was also taking a classical approach to jazz and modern pop music and R&B. As the years went on, and as I aged with my horn and I really got into the versatility of music, I started learning jazz technique and R&B, and I started playing more venues. It kind of evolved my style into making it my own. And I was able to take my gospel background of music and merge it into like the neo-soul kind of avenue I had been pursuing. After around 2021 and 2022, I had gotten to know Jody Espina and the Jody Jazz brand, and I had actually started really just getting into playing the diverse lineup of mouthpieces. So on the TV show, you'll see that on my alto, I'm primarily playing the Jody Jazz Gold DV size 6. And on my tenor, a lot of the TV recording was done on the Theo Wayne Art Blue. But if you actually look through my video recordings where I'm professionally recording my videos, be it on Facebook or TikTok, you'll see that I'm actually using the Jody Jazz hand-hammered rose gold mouthpiece for my tenor. I was actually in California getting ready to go into the set, and Jody was so gracious to actually ship the mouthpiece prototype to the hotel I was staying at the time. It took a few rehearsals, and it was just like the producers, the choreographers noticed that there was something different in my playing. It was a lot more vibrant, it was a lot more projected, and it was a lot more just form-fitting to my personality. And it was like, it came through, and even Simon was like, since your audition, you've just taken the kind of style that you're using and you've taken it to the next level and beyond. But that's what happens when you kind of get equipment and gear that matches exactly what you're going for. I think it ties into what, we do over here at Sweetwater. Because the goal of any musician is to find the right hardware to where it sounds like, even if you take away the microphone, you take away the EQ, you take away all the effects, it still sounds exactly like how it would if you're performing on a large-scale stage or in a recording studio. And I know for me, my goal is to get the mouthpiece that not only sounds good recording, but sounds exactly the same when you take away all the microphones, all the pedals, effects, all of it. And the beautiful thing about not only this Yamaha 62 saxophone, but also the Jody Jazz DV mouthpiece, is that it provides that for me. One thing that I noticed when I was playing, on the streets in Los Angeles during, between takes and everything, is that this mouthpiece really does project really well with minimal effort. I was able to play under a bridge, and the acoustics and everything were captured perfectly without me having to overexert myself by playing really hard and loud. And it was like when I needed that projection, when I needed it to really carry and I needed my notes to soar, I was able to put that enthusiasm into the instrument and it responded instantly. And it's like, that's the best part about these mouthpieces, that they're so responsive to the amount of air you're putting in. And it's like you barely have to really work to really get the sound you're going for out. And it doesn't do the work for you. You'll still have to blow and everything, but it'll definitely make achieving that highlight sound you're looking for a lot easier. And it's like the best part about really playing these instruments and performing is that it helps you find your sound. And it helped me find mine. And from what I know and people that I've heard about that have played these mouthpieces and all the other ones that I've played, from the DV to the Superjet to the Jumbo to everything in between, there's a mouthpiece that's out there to help you find your sound. And for me, it was this one. But the question becomes, what will it be for you? And over at Sweetwater, we have a mouthpiece here waiting for you to find your sound and your style. At the time, when I was about 9 years old, I had lost most of my friends. I grew up a very kind of popular kid, growing up in band. It has its own sense of camaraderie to it. In playing the sax during that time, I found a way to positively gear myself forward into a brighter place, because from about 9 to around 14, I was pretty broken. I didn't have the best stuff. I didn't live in the best place. I didn't even have the newest shoes or the newest clothes. So around the time I was 9 years old, I thought I was like everybody else. But it became clear to me, because my teachers would kind of bully me and pick on me and mock my voice, that I was different. I had a very raspy voice and it was very high because I was born premature and I had a hole in my vocal cords and they didn't close all the way. So I didn't look or sound like everybody else, and I was a lot smaller than my peers. The teachers would kind of make fun of the rasp in my voice and they'd get the class in on the joke. a lot of times when I'd be leaving school, I'd just find myself crying most times because I was so hurt that something was so wrong with me that I felt like I was different. I'm glad that I was able to really just have a great support system in my family, and around the time I had picked up the saxophone, and I was still in school at the time and I wasn't really taking it too serious, but I had blown my first note, and my mom was in my grandma's house, and we were all there, and my grandma was like, "He's gifted." And at the time, my mom had a look on her face where it was like, "Okay, Mama, sure he is." And I was 9 at the time, and within that first 6 months, I kind of tried to self-teach myself, but during school and everything, I was still dealing with getting bullied, and one of the teachers actually had it out for me so bad that my saxophone case was much heavier than I was able to carry at the time. So my brother would carry it up to the top of the stairs for me and leave it at the door, and the teacher had a problem with that, so she would tell me, "You have to let him carry it on his own," and I'd struggle to get it up the stairs, but me and my brother worked out a system where he'd drop it off at the door just before I'd get into class, to where it would look like I was carrying it by myself. And it was a Yamaha Advantage case, so it was kind of had that hard plastic exterior to it, and we had that swinging handle, so it was kind of a chore to get it up all those stairs. And I was 9 at the time, and I wasn't that large, so it was not a very good time to try to be a budding musician. Somewhere along the way, this teacher thought it would kind of teach me a lesson to take my horn and hide it. And in school, they had done an all call to try to help me find this horn. And at the time, the horn I didn't know it yet, but it was my destiny to kind of get into all this music. So at the time, I was breaking down because I couldn't find it. After several hours of looking, this teacher appears with my Yamaha case. And I remember her saying, "You should be more careful where you take your instrument." So after that, I had various health challenges. I had a stress-induced seizure, and my mom knew that it was time for me to get out. So she put me into homeschool, and she got me a music teacher. Now, I had a music teacher at that time as well in school, but I would just kind of go to music lessons every Tuesday, and I'd go the next day and go back to school and wake up in this nightmare. But the constant joy I had was I knew that somewhere along the way I'd get to play my horn again. And coming from a family where my mom was a singer, my grandmother was a concert cellist, I didn't grow up playing gospel. I grew up playing classical music. So my grandmother would kind of coach me on classical techniques, and she'd always tell me about how her dad would kind of have big band music playing throughout the house, or he'd play, I'd hear about him playing his horn. I didn't really think too much of it. I kind of brushed it off in my younger years, and it wasn't up until I was about 15 and 14 where it kind of hit me that my grandmother's father wasn't just some average musician. He didn't just like play for fun. And I had actually gotten a chance to play at the Apollo at the time. And I was still using my heavy Yamaha Advantage case and everything. And we were traveling a little bit here and there, but it still wasn't professional yet. But I had gotten into my own history. And my grandmother had kind of sat me down because she figured that it was time for me to know that, I was progressing pretty quickly, playing the saxophone, and I should know where this love for jazz and this rhythm just kind of pulsing through me kind of comes from. So she sat me down and she told me about her father. And he actually played Selmer tenor saxophone. And his name was Maxwell Davis. He was a composer and arranger for Louis Armstrong and Disney's The Satchmo Way. And he wrote for B.B. King and Etta James and Z.Z. Hill and several others. But she made sure I actually got to hear his music and I got to know my history. And it was several years later where I would get my first tenor saxophone. It's a silver Yamaha 62 silver plated horn. I looked at pictures, and way before I even got my first tenor, I was in about 9th grade, and me and my friends, I went to a fine arts high school where the best way to learn a new horn was to just switch. I had some older guys that were teaching me the ins and outs of jazz and kind of making sure I knew who to study, how to study, and they kind of challenged me with improvisation. Now after this, getting into high school, I knew my history. And I had kind of been listening to jazz music, and I kind of came into it listening to a lot of Cannonball Adderley, and the milestone marker was, of course, learning giant steps. Now I didn't have a tenor at the time, so I was trying to learn giant steps on alto, and it felt impossible. Well, rightfully so, because to any high school artist, it was. But with enough work and enough practice, you eventually get there. So I did. And I started switching off my alto, and playing tenor up until I got my first tenor. And then after that, I progressed a lot more. And then I got back into homeschool, and I eventually graduated high school and went on to college. And after that, I was a full swing musician. Coming from playing a hard rubber mouthpiece to switching over to the Jody Jazz Gold DV, the difference was like night and day. I went from feeling very subdued in my playing to when I switched over to the Gold DV, it was like I was able to play exactly what I heard and what I imagined. It's so free and it packs its own powerful punch that every professional artist should experience at least once. Because after playing this for the first time, I was sold. All I can think of is if I hadn't got this mouthpiece, I'd still sound like the same way I did when I wasn't trying to go pro. Before I could make my own style, I was just playing classical styled hard rubber. But with this, the sky's the limit. I can get to any altissimo at a moment's notice, and that is the magic. After getting the golden buzzer on America's Got Talent from Terry Crews, I received a message from Jody Espina over at Jody Jazz. And he was so moved by my performance that he just knew that with his mouthpieces, I could take it to the next level. And after I received the golden buzzer and went on to my next round, it didn't just change my style of playing, but it boosted my confidence. It made the stage my home, and it brought me to that professional level that I felt like I was always meant to play at. All right, my name is Avery Dixon. It was a pleasure to share my story with you. And if you have any questions related to the saxophone, the mouthpieces, reeds, or anything in between, contact your Sweetwater sales engineer.